Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today I want to give you guys Kripp nerfs versus Blizzard nerfs. That's right. It's kind of like a nerf prediction video, but I want to clearly separate how I think things should be changed, because some of you guys might find that pretty amusing, and also how I believe things will change. Now, we are just over a week into the Saviors of Uldum expansion. It has been quite a ride, but at the same time, there are some things that are clearly out of balance, and in the last year or so in Hearthstone, they have been really on top of balance patches, and they haven't even been like super announced or anything. It just happens that like the next day, we have a whole bunch of changes that completely change the game for typically the better. And it's kind of why I'm happy I do my card reviews on the basis of the card's individual strength, because that tends to matter quite a bit if they keep this up, and I have every reason to think that they will keep this up. So, first off, let's tackle the problems, and I'll give you guys my input on the problem cards and how they are likely to change in terms of Blizzard's eyes and how I think they should be changed. So, Hearthstone has a lot of very powerful decks right now, overwhelmingly slow, and a lot of people kind of agree on the ones that are the big problems. So the first big problem is Control Warrior. Without a doubt, Control Warrior is by far the single most played deck, and it's not really all that different from the last expansion. You get a few extra taunts in there, but it's basically the same thing. Just wait. Play some whatever stuff in the early game to keep up on the board, and you just win if you make it to the late game because you're playing a really slow deck with a whole bunch of health generation and a whole bunch of card generation through the Dr. Boom card. And that's where we're going to talk about things. The Dr. Boom hero card is a real problem card in the standard format. One option is to Hall of Fame it because, well, a lot of people correctly have been talking about this. It's not that overpowered of a card in Wild, but in standard, it is so powerful, you have no idea. Across all ranks, Control Warrior is the best deck in the game right now. Now, if you only take like Legend rank, it's actually Combo Priest, so we'll talk about that in a moment. But on average, most of the Hearthstone experiences people have, Control Warrior crushes. Now, with that said, if you're playing a deck like Control Warrior, especially now with the new tempo options, you would imagine that you might lose if you don't get a good opening hand. You would imagine that a card like the 7-mana hero card that doesn't do anything but give you a little bit of armor when you play it, well, that's probably a difficult card to start on your opening hand. Well, you'd be wrong. If you've taken a look at hand statistics, mulligan statistics, they're out there. It turns out the single best card by a pretty large margin to have in your opening hand in any game of Hearthstone is the 7-mana cost Hero Dr. Boom card. That alone should tell you just how game-breaking this card is. Right now in Hearthstone, and for a recent while, we've seen that Blizzard has made a push to change the game, so there's a lot of minion combat, there's a lot of like trading decisions, playing around board clears decisions, so they're trying to push that game style, and the Dr. Boom card just kind of pushes that out of control with the fact that the mechs gain rush. Now, if that's all it did, I think it would be a pretty cool hero card. It completely changed the game, and yeah, it would kind of break into what Control Warrior doesn't do very well, just constantly fight for the board. Now, I don't know if that's the main problem. Some people have suggested that perhaps I like one suggestion I read on Reddit, perhaps the fact that it gives your mechs rush should be a battle cry to affect your mechs in hand and your deck. So generated mechs don't have rush. That's interesting. I think it's a little bit softball, given how crazy strong the card is right now. I think the other main thing to look at for the Dr. Boom hero card is the fact that the hero powers are just insanely powerful, and more importantly, you don't sacrifice being a Control Warrior. That's kind of the thing, because if you look at like the Warrior quest where you start spawning a lot of dudes, it's really cool, it's really powerful, but you sacrifice your armor up, you sacrifice the fact that you can gain health. That's a pretty decent sacrifice. It makes it so it can be quite a problem against decks that have direct damage, because they will actually be able to kill you at that point. So one thing that I've realized playing against Control Warriors, when I'm playing like a burn deck and I feel I have a decent chance, sometimes my opponent like half the time is getting that 7 armor hero power. So I think how I would nerf the Dr. Boom hero card is just quite simply removing the 7 armor hero power. If you're going to become Dr. Boom and do all crazy stuff with mechs and give them rush and generate cards and whatever, just have that be the actual gameplay. Let it not be on top of that still playing a control warrior type of gameplay. I feel like if warriors in Dr. Boom mode no longer gain armor through their hero power, they'd actually have to make some pretty meaningful decisions of whether to clear boards or not. But the fact that they often get a bonus like, 30 health by the end of the game, that makes those decisions a lot less important, and it makes the deck overall a lot more crazy. Now, I think a change like that wouldn't really, shatter the fabric of the game or anything, but I think it would make it so Control Warrior might not just be the very best deck, so maybe not a lot of people would continue playing it. That's how I would nerf Warrior, that's how I'd nerf the Dr. Boom hero card. I think Blizzard is likely to take a look at the same card because they follow win rates and play win rates of specific cards, and this is an actual outlier in that department. But on the other hand, Blizzard likes to do mana cost nerfs. And mana cost nerfs, while they're very simple to do, it allows Blizzard to push changes in a timely manner. I think it might also be appropriate, and I do predict that Blizzard will just do a mana cost nerf on Dr. Boom, and I think the best way to nerf Dr. Boom is to make him not 8, but 9 mana. If you have a 9 mana Dr. Boom, it's pretty hard to play it. You literally need to be winning the game when you're playing it. You won't be able to keep it in your opening hand anymore, and you won't be able to use a hero power the turn that you are Dr. Boom hero. And I think those changes will have a similar effect, but in turn that would completely kill the card for the wild format and would maybe even kill the card for the standard format. But I don't know. Maybe not. So that's the warrior situation. The other big decks, we also have Combo Priest. So let's talk about Combo Priest. Combo Priest is the #1 deck in Legend ranks right now. It does rival Control Warrior for the ranks just below that. It can be a bit of a difficult deck to play if you've never played it before, but the main problem with it is that it's just an all-in, extremely high RNG aggro deck. While it can be tricky to play, once you know how to play this deck, the outcome of any given match is just totally up in the air. If you don't get any card draw, it's like turn 5 and you have no cards left and you just lose. Right? If you play out a bunch of stuff and your opponent has like a silence board clear, like a brawl or something, you lose. So it just, I don't know, it's not satisfying for me to see all of these games. And on top of that, these decks, along with all of them in the past, seem to have the Divine Spirit combo. You just, double up and then double up the health again, and then you either flip it or interfire it or something, and it does like tremendous damage, 30 damage, 40 damage. You're constantly seeing this with Priest, and it seems to not be in line with what Blizzard wants to do, because Blizzard has made it, Hall of Faming direct damage Priest cards like Mind Blast and whatnot. So, this is very similar. Now, possibly this is something that Blizzard will take a look at. In my opinion, I kind of like the Divine Spirit mechanics, but I also kind of like the flip mechanics. So it's a very difficult kind of fix. Possibly this is the case to Hall of Fame, the doubling of health values through Divine Spirit. I don't know. I don't like the Hall of Fame solution, but honestly, it's pretty difficult to figure this one out. And in other terms, if people really like playing those type of decks, they still can do so in Wild, I guess. Yeah. And honestly, I think it's also how Blizzard will do things. I think Divine Spirit is the next very likely candidate for a Hall of Fame inclusion, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happened much sooner than we think rather than much later. Priest is a bit of a problem. There are a lot of super powerful Priest cards, but, maybe it's Priest's turn this time around. But the main thing that makes it not fun to play against is the doubling and quadrupling of health totals moving on into attack. That's a bit of an issue. Now, the other big decks, let's just talk about them so you guys are informed about what's happening in Hearthstone right now. So the other big group of decks, you have Mages. Mages are very powerful, but again, they're very RNG. Based on the draw that you get, much more so than other decks, the outcome of your game will be predetermined. Now, Highlander Hunter is a very good deck, but I feel that's kind of a meta call right now. At its core, Highlander Hunter is not that strong of a deck. It's just that it has a slightly favorable matchup against Warrior. It has a slightly favorable matchup against Priest. And it also has a slightly favorable matchup against Mage. So it just turns out that it's just a very well meta deck right now. But if they change Warrior, if they change Priest, and my next recommendation, if they change Mage, Highlander Hunter is not going to be a problem anymore. It's still going to be a good deck, but it's not going to be a problem deck in the meta in any way, at least in my opinion. And the other big deck is Murloc Paladin. Murloc Paladin is fairly inconsistent, but on average, it is in fact a tier 1 deck in the game right now. I did correctly identify this on day 1 for you guys. Very similar concepts as you've seen in the video. You just, dump a whole bunch of Murlocs with a cheated out tip the scales, I think it's called. Powerful deck, but it's not played that much. It's a very low play rate deck, so maybe we just leave that alone because of that. People just don't seem to gravitate to that game plan. And good thing, because on average, I've seen enough Murlocs in Hearthstone in my day. Mages, however, they do have a bit of problems. Their win rates are a bit too high, but more importantly, it's not fun to play against these decks because there's just too much variance, too much random stuff. And I think that kind of takes away from the gameplay that a lot of people, myself included, wish to get when we play this game. Now, the main thing with Mage is Conjurer's Calling. Being able to just, split up your minions and, get some crazy mana cheated out minions when you really have no business doing so. And in some cases doing this after they've done a favorable trade on the board. It's just so unbelievably crazy and game winning. And the other aspect is Lunas. Lunas making all of your deck 1 mana. Lunas is one of the best cards in Mage. It is the best card to have in your opening hand. But I really thought about this, and I feel like Lunas is still pretty fair. I think if you build your whole deck around, cheating out big minions with Lunas, if you do play an early Lunas, that's just playing your deck. That's not one card being too powerful. It's how you build your deck. If you get the combo piece that lets you play your deck out as you want, well, that's kind of fair. And even still, it's not as crazy as a win rate as like Dr. Boom is for Warrior. So I think Luna's a very strong card, but in my opinion, I think it's still in the pretty reasonable department for balancing. One card that I do think is a little bit out of control is the one that I mentioned, Conjurer's Calling. Conjurer's Calling, I feel, is a little bit out of control, and this is kind of what inspired me to make this video. I really thought about the problem with Conjurer's Calling, and it's one that happened again and again, and it certainly is not what I expect Blizzard to do, and we'll talk about that in a second. So, how would I nerf Conjurer's Calling? Conjurer's Calling, I feel, is a balanced card if you don't play mana cheated minions like Giants and Luna's stuff and whatnot. It's pretty balanced. Like, if you talk about Arena, people call it a game-breaking Arena card. It's just a really good Arena card. It's not the best card in Arena. There's like big board clears are better for Mage than Conjurer's Calling, as a matter of fact. But it's a really good card. Now, there's a difference between a card that breaks the game and a really good card. And the difference has to do with these minions that have their manas cheated out. So if you're playing like a Mountain Giant for 3 mana, and then, you Conjurer's Calling, yeah, you can pinpoint the problem on the Conjurer's Calling, but you can also start questioning perhaps, why is it that you can play a minion for 3 mana and then it doesn't have a 3 mana cost when it's in play? Right? We just kind of take that for granted. But on the other hand, Blizzard has changed the way that mana costs in your deck are saved fairly recently. So probably the best solution to this, because this problem keeps coming up. It's a problem in like Big Priest and Wild historically. It's been the problem with Giants historically. Maybe it's not Giants. Maybe it's just this mechanic. In my opinion, the way a game should work is if you play something for a specific mana cost, it should just continue to cost that amount of mana while it's in play. So, for example, if you want to play a 3 mana Mountain Giant, and then you want to Conjurer's Calling it, I think that's fine, but you should get 3 drops, right? you shouldn't get like 11 drops. That's a little bit too much. That's where the game-breaking part happens. A card like Luna's Galaxy is pretty fair. It just gets unfair when you have a 10 mana card costing 1 mana, and then you Conjurer's Calling it, and that 1 mana minion becomes 2 10 mana minions. So the problem, okay, on one hand, you can blame Conjurer's Calling, but there's going to be another Conjurer's Calling. Blizzard designs these cards in a vacuum. Next expansion is going to be another card that's problematic with mana-cheated minions. Really, the way that this problem is actually solved is by changing the way that mana-cheated minions exist in play. They exist in play for how much mana you actually played the card for. A lot of these problems, in fact, possibly all of them just go away. So that's how I would nerf that. I wouldn't necessarily nerf Conjurer's Calling. It's a great card, but it's still pretty balanced. I wouldn't nerf Luna's Galaxy. It's a great card, especially if you build your deck around it, but it's still somewhat within reason. It's just this mana cheating of minions mechanic that just, takes this concept and just goes crazy. So I think that deserves a fix, but at the same time, I don't think Blizzard will do that, and I don't think Blizzard won't do that because of like, oh yeah, Blizzard, they just don't know what they're doing right now. They know what they're doing pretty well. It's just Blizzard is on a pretty aggressive timetable to give us content, expansion content, PvE content, now mid-expansion content. They're just content machines. They kind of just put most of their effort towards this stuff, and I think it's probably quite difficult to change the core of the game and how I think it should be fixed. So I don't expect them to change the game as I hope they would change the game, particularly because they try to get their first round of nerfs fairly early in an expansion period. Those nerfs are coming relatively soon, whatever they're going to be, and I don't think just don't have the time and resources to push out the type of fixes that I would like them to. The type of fix that we're probably going to get is most likely a mana cost change on Conjurer's Calling. They're probably not going to touch Luna's because Luna's used to cost 7 mana and it was unplayable. So putting it at 6, I don't know. Would that even make a difference? Tough call. But if they change Conjurer's Calling to like a 5 mana twin spell, I think it'd be quite reasonable. It would lower the play rate of Mage. It will lower the power level of Mage. It's just, I'm telling you, this problem, it's going to come up again and again and again. So I'd like to see a permanent solution. But in any case, I hope you guys enjoyed my insight. Let me know what you think might happen, because I think it might happen pretty soon. So get your predictions out there. Hope you guys enjoyed mine, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.